Zev,
Ezra Hashem. Today's daf is Masechta Baba Kamma daf Samach
Kamma,
Samach
yeah,
7, and we're going to start from Samach Vovo Med Beis. It's a very simple flow through daf. We learned we're in the discussion of Anna who steals something doesn't necessarily have to give the exact thing back. We learned in the previous in the previous Gemara that there is an opinion that says that if the one that you stole it from gave up hope, right? He said, "Oh, I'll never get it back." Then the Ganav keeps it. When the Ganav wants to do tshuva, he doesn't have to give the item back. He can write a check. That's called Yiyush Kaina. Yiyush means if the Nignav, the guy that Nignav means the person that got his item stolen from, gave up hope. That means the Ganav acquired the item that he stole, and all he has to do is pay money to return it. That's the opinion of the Rabbah. Rav Yosef said, Yiyush Einoi Kaina. Yiyush, the fact that the Nignav gave up hope, it doesn't mean that the Ganav acquired it. If the Ganav still has the item, he has to return it. Hi, Sheldon.
Hi.
We're up to Samach Zayin Amid. We're up to Daf Samach Zayin, but we're starting from Samach Vav Amid Beis.
Okay, thank you.
Abaya Rav Yosef. Abaya asked the question to Rav Yosef. Let me make it bigger. We learned Rav Yosef is of the opinion that said Yiyush is not koina. Again, Yiyush means that if the Nignav gave up hope from ever catching the Ganav, so that does not mean that the Ganav automatically owns the item. So now Rav Yosef, Abaya asked a question to Rav Yosef from a Mishnah. The Mishnah is Masechta Kelim. In order for something to be Mekabel Toma, it has to be a usable item. Sometimes things don't look usable to you, but if the owner of the item thinks that, you know what, I'm going to turn it into something, that automatically effectuates that this item could be Mekabel Toma. Irish Shel Balabais. Let's say a regular guy, plain guy, has leather. So machshavason mitamasim. As soon as he thinks about what he plans to do with that leather, let's say he wants to make a wallet from that leather, so that automatically makes it to be Mekabel Toma. Vishel Abdon. But if a guy is in the business of tanning leather, so he's usually going to sell it. So even if he had in mind to, let's say, you know what, if nobody buys it, I'll make a wallet for myself. It doesn't work, because as soon as somebody walks into the store and says, "Oh, please make me a pair of shoes," so he'll turn it into a shoe. So it's not the final, his thought is not the final decision on what's going to happen to the item. So therefore, a tanner, ein machshavasim etamasim. His thought doesn't not make it mekabel tomo. Shel ganav, if someone steals an item, so presumably when you steal an item, the owner, the one that the victim gave up hope that he's going to ever get this item back. So therefore, it really belongs to the ganav. As soon as the ganav thinks about what he's going to do with the item, let's say it's leather, if he thinks he's going to make a wallet out of it, that automatically makes it mekabel tuma. Shel gazlan, but a vandal, a mugger, let's say, who the victim knows who did this to him, so he's never really giving up hope. He's hoping to find the gazlan. So ein machshavasim matamasa. If the gazlan thinks what he's going to do with the item, that doesn't automatically make it that this item could be mekabel tuma, because the victim is thinking that he's going to get it back, and the item does not belong to the gazlan, so he can't decide what he's going to do with the item, with the leather. Reb Shimon says chiluf hadvarim. You'd say the opposite. Because shel gazlan, a gazlan, or one person who's so strong could mug in midday, the victim gives up hope. So therefore, the item, the leather, belongs to the gazlan. So machshavasim etamasim. Then the thought of the gazlan makes it mekabel toma. Shel ganav, a guy who's so afraid has to come in the middle of the night to steal. So then the victim does not give up hope, and he's hoping to get back his item. So therefore, it does not belong to the ganav. Lefi ein machshavasim etama. Lefi shloi nisyayishu abaylim. The Baalim did not give up hope. Shma mina. So over here, from this whole Mishnah, we say tell that the victim gave up hope, Yush Kaina, then it belongs to the Ganav. The question was whether you give up hope from a Ganav, Muslim. But either way, in order to make sense of this Mishnah, you have to say Yush Kaina. So that is the question Abaya asked Rav Yosef. Amalei, so Rav Yosef answers, here we're talking about Kegoin Shekitz on. You cut it down, you cut off the edges of the leather. So you did a Shinui Maisa. You did an action, the Ganav did an action to show ownership of the item. And because he did an action that showed ownership of the item, along with Yush, right? Because Kitzon is not such a big action. Along with Yish, that's how you're kind over here. Yish alone would not make it the Ganav's item, but it's not ownership. But there was a little bit of a Maisa along with the Yish that made it into the Ganav or the Gazlan. Says the Gemara, you're talking about over here that a leather that you cut off the edges, but the Mishnayos over there are talking about a type of leather mat, like a food mat that they used to maybe put on a table, which you don't really have to cut it down to size because any size is good. And so therefore, maskif law Rabba Rav Honam Bala Itzba Shonikam, the Itzba Ein Tzricha Kitzia. The subject of the Mishnayos over there is discussing a food mat, like a table mat. And therefore, Itzba does not need any cutting it down. The Tanan kol mokum shein chesar malacha masham tamasa yesh chesar malacha ein machshavas matavma chutz min itzba. So we see that the Mishnayos over there is talking about this called floor mat. So you can't say over here that the reason why the Ganav was kaina is because shekitz on, he cut it down to size, because if we're dealing here with an itzba, right, if that's the subject of the Mishnayos, there's no need to cut things down to size. So it must be, why was the Ganav kaina it by himself? Is because they had Yeush. There was Yish over there. So we see Yish is kindness. So again, back to the question against Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef was of the opinion that if the victim gave up hope, the item, the thing that was stolen from him automatically becomes the possessions of the Ganav. But we see from the Mishnayos, it automatically does not become. Yish ain't a kaina. And from the Mishnayos, you see Yish is kaina. Ella Amar Rabba said, Hi Milsa Koshibe Rabba Rav Yosef Esr Matartan Shnin. There were 22 years that Rabba had this question against Rav Yosef. 22 years they're arguing about this, and from the Mishnayos that says Yish is kaina. And Rav Yosef did not have an answer. The Mishnayos seemed to disagree with his opinion. Rav Yosef Parka. Until Rav Yosef took over the position as Rosh Hashiva, I guess Rabba passed away, and Rav Yosef took over the position, and now he had to defend himself. How does he disagree with a Mishnah that says Yish kaina? Answers, so Rav Yosef is going to say, since we're talking about an itzba over there, a table mat, the leather that turned into a table mat, well, it's along with Yish over there in the Mishnayos. It's not Yish alone that's kaina. It's Yish with Shinui Hashem, with changing of the name. Kishinu Hamaisa Dami. That's as if that is almost as strong as an action. When you change the item and do an action, so now it's a different item. So also when the name changed, so if an item changed its name because you designated it to be something, that automatically, along with Yish, makes it the owner, it becomes the new owner is now the Ganav. Shina Maisa Maitama, why is it when I do an action, let's say I steal wood and I make it into a chair, now it becomes mine. Why? First you stole wood, hash the kalim, and now you turned it into a chair, so now it becomes the possession of a Ganav. Shiner Shemnami, when something changes its name, like over here, Mikara Karele Mashka, first it was called a piece of leather, a flat piece of leather, and then you said, you know what, it fits nicely as a mat. Now you call it a food mat, and once it changes its name, people are now calling, oh, it's a food mat. You know, you put a sticker on it and say milchiks on it. So it's a food mat. So therefore, once it's changed its name, along with Yush, it automatically now belongs into the possession of the Ganav. That's why Yush is kind over there. Says the Gemara, you're telling me that anytime something changes its name, it belongs to the Ganav, right? V'harei miresh. Somebody steals, let's say, a beam, a big piece of wood. The Iko Shiner Shem. When you build it and put it into a house as part of a roof, you're changing the name of that piece of wood. Now it becomes a roof. The mikara kishura. First, it was a big piece of lumber. V'hashta tlolet. Now it's a roof. Okay. Utznan, we learned in the Mishnah, al hamireish hagozel. If you steal a piece of wood, shabona b'mira, and you build it into a house, shenoitel domav, because the ganav has to pay back the money. But may tikonas hashavim, because we want to make it easier for the ganav to do tshuva. He doesn't have to knock down his house and return the piece of beam that he stole, the wood that he stole. All he has to do is write a check. But it's only because Chachamim say you don't have to knock your house down. But Tamam made takanas hashavim. It's only because the Chachamim wanted to make it easier for a person to do tshuva, for Ganav to do tshuva. We go to Samach Bava now. If it wasn't so, you would have to return it. But there was a change of name over here. Rav Yosef says a change of name automatically makes it the Ganav. Here we see not so. Here we have to come up with a new reason of takanas hashavim in order to make it that the Ganav doesn't have to return the exact item that he stole. And Rav Yosef said, Shini Hashem alone is enough. Shini Hashem alone is enough to make it into the Ganav. And says the Gemara, Rav Yosef says here, it's not really a change of name. Marish Shmoyolov. It still remains a cross beam. A cross beam, you could steal it as a standalone, and even if you put it into the roof, it still remains cross beam. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, Tzalas Abayis Eila Hamam Tatin, V'ubim Eila Marisha. So we see that in touching up a pasuk in the Nevuah of Yecheskel, we still use, even though it was built into the building, we still call it a marish. A marish means a crossbeam, a piece of wood. So therefore, it never lost its name. So therefore, your question is not a good question, because that story with the crossbeam turning into a roof was no really a good Shini Hashem. Rabbi Yosef says another teretz. Shina Chayzel B'Yasai B'Shina Hashem Lo Have a Shina. A Shina, change in name that could automatically revert back to its original by, if you would knock down the house, then it would still be a cross beam. That's not called a Shina Hashem. A Shina Hashem is something, let's say, a piece of leather that you turned into a food map. So a food map, it'll never turn back into a leather that you're going to turn into a shoe. Recycling thing wasn't around in the time of the Gemara. So that is a Shini Hashem that never can revert back to original form. A change in name that can never go back to its original form. That's called a good Shini Hashem. Says the Gemara question. Shini Hashem, if you change a name that can never revert back to its original form, is that, you're telling me that is called a Shinoi? Let's see. We know that in a Keli, if a mikvah does not have the 40 saw in it, if you put in 3 lugs of mayim shu'uvim, if you put in like water from a keli, that could passel a mikvah, right? It has to be rainwater. What happens? The Bryce is going to talk about bereitzina, a pipe. The mikara kitzitzta. First, it's a block of wood. And then you turned it into a pipe. And listen what happened. The Tanya we learned to the Bryce. Tzinar, a pipe, a shechakakot. You took a piece of wood and you hollowed it out. Then you put it right near a mikvah. Hoiseles a mikvah. That makes a mikvah puzzle because it was a keli, and now you're bringing water into the mikvah through that pipe. That's no good. But if you put it into the ground as a piece of wood, and while it's connected to the ground, you made a hole through it. It does not passel the mikvah. Okay, so therefore, what do you see from here? So the Gemara is going to finish the question. If you're thinking that Shini Hashem, once something changes its name, it means something. So why do you say in the second part that it's kavoy is kosher? It doesn't passel the mikvah because it's a piece of wood. But at the end of the day, when you hollowed it out, you turned it from a piece of wood into a pipe, and therefore it changed its name. And therefore, it's now called a pipe. So be it. It's connected to the ground. It should not. It should passel a mikvah. That's the question. It should also make it passel because it's now called a pipe, and it's not going to consider it a piece of wood which doesn't passel a mikvah. It's now a regular keli. Who cares if you connected it to the ground, it was a piece of wood, but once you hollowed it out, it now becomes a keli. And says the Shani Shiva Rabbanim. Ashina Hashem is something. It means something. A change in name, it means something. But this to passel a mikvah is only drabanan, so they didn't be so strict with that. Then what's the difference if they put the piece of wood in the ground and then hollowed it out? You say it doesn't passel a mikvah. But if you hollowed it out first and then put it into the ground, it does passel the mikvah. Why not? Shina Hashem, it doesn't matter. You should always view it as a piece of wood, and it shouldn't passel a mikvah. And says the Gemara, Hasam ikataris clear la betolish. The first, then the ratio, when you hollowed it out first, right when you were holding it, it looks like a keli. It looks like a vessel, and therefore we say that we're more machmer to say it passes the mikvah. But in the second case, in the end of the brisa, ain't olav. When you put it into the ground, it wasn't the keli, and therefore, if you hollowed it out later on, true, it changes its name into a keli. But since ma'im she'uvim pasal mikvah is only the rabbanim, so therefore they weren't strict to say that we'll call it a change in name. We'll always view it as a piece of wood. Mason, one final question. Haganav v'hagazlam v'anas hegdeshin hegdit trumas and truma ma'asrois masa. Here it says a ganav and a gazlam, and an anas is a type of gazlam that pays the money, gives the guy the money. But anyway, if they steal something, and they can make it hegdish. The truma is truma, and the meiser is meiser. If they steal fruit, they can make it meiser. And if they steal wheat, they can make truma out of it. And they can make hegdish. Why? It must be that it's after years, right? If it's after years, and therefore it belongs to the ganav, he has a right to be magdashit. Because if years is not koina, how could they be magdashit? And says the Gemara, right? Amrei, really is koina over here because along with stealing it, you have lost is a shina Hashem. Ika shina Hashem. Karativla v'hashta truma. First it's called tevel, and now it's called truma. Hegdish. First you call it when you made it hegdish. Mikara chulin hashta hegdish. First it was chulin, and then you made it into hegdish. So therefore, you have a shina Hashem along with years. Of course, Rav Yosef would agree that it would be koina. But Rav Yosef's opinion is only when years as a standalone would not be koina. How do I know if you change an item? A ganav steals an item. Let's say he stole wood and turns it into a chair. It belongs now to the ganav. Shnema, the Heshav is Gzela, Matam Adloy Mashagazal. Pasuk says you should return the Gzela that you stole. What do you mean? That you stole? Of course, turn the Gzela that you stole. So we darshan in Kain Shagazal, it's if there was no change on the item that you stole, Yachsa, you have to return it. Vimlav, Dome Ba'alma Bayashlumay. But if it's not the same item that you stole, if you made it into a chair, then all you have to do is write a check and pay back. Says the Gemara, "Hi, gashagazim abayale," but I need ashagazim for another drasha. Limute gezel avav sheinu ma'asav chaimish al gezel avav. Let's say a father, we know a father was a shomer on something, and then he claimed it was stolen and swore that it was stolen, and then he died, and then the son said, "You know what? My father lied, and he swore falsely." So, on a normal situation, if you swear falsely, you have to pay 20% more. You have to be Ma'asav Chaimish. That's the halacha, and bring a carbon asham. But since the son did not do the stealing, it was his father doing the stealing. So when he agrees to pay, and he says, "Oh, we swore falsely," he doesn't have to pay a chaimish. So we see that we're using asha gazal only if you steal, you pay chaimish. If your father stole, you don't have to pay the chaimish to make up for his wrongdoings. So I need asha gazal for something. So not to teach me shinu koine. So the Gemara says it teaches me two things. Return his gezel. Asha gazel lamali. Lemichtav. Why do you have to say asha gazel? Shmami no tarte. You see two things I did. One, shinoi is koina, and one, you don't pay choimish on gezel avav. The ikeda amrei. No, others say shinoi is not koina, and asha gazel is only used for one thing. Amrav chizda amrav yanisum nayin shinin she'enei koina. How do you know shinoi is not koina? Shnema, the Heshav is Gzela. You have to return the Gzela. That means, according to this version, even if you stole wood and made it into a chair, you still have to give the chair back. Mekalmaka, return, no matter what happened to the item that you stole, you have to return it back to the victim. But the pasuk says you have to return the item the way it was, the way you stole it. So as the Gemara says, that part asher gazel al gzela shaloi ma'asav chaimish vein ma'asav chaimish al gzel aviv. And so that I use it for only your gezel you don't be ma'asav chaimish, but not your ma'asav chaimish, but not on the gezela that your father. Ama Ula. Ula is of the opinion like Rav Yosef. I don't know Yish is not kaina. Shenema, because the pasuk says, the pasuk in Navi that compares gzela to something that's limping. Gazel dumi de pesach. When you steal something, it's as if you're dealing with a limping animal. What does a limping animal have to do with a stolen animal? Hashem is saying to all these people, you're bringing me karbanos that are stolen, you're bringing me karbanos that are limping or sick. So what is the juxtaposition between a stolen animal and a limping animal? Ma pesach, the less late to kantaklal. Just like you can't fix a limp, an animal that has a mum cannot be fixed. You go to Amid Beis. Av Gozel, the less late kanta, that no matter what, Gezela cannot be fixed. Loishna lifna yish, loishna achi. It doesn't matter if the person was miyayish or not miyayish, you cannot fix that problem. That problem. So therefore, Re'ula gave an opinion, after yish, the ganav is not koina. Rav Amamahaka, I have another pasuk, karbanoi v'loy hagozel. The pasuk says you have to bring your own carbon to the base of Migdash, not a stolen carbon. What does it mean? Amos, lifna ilem lifna yish pshita lama likra. If the man stole an animal, and the Torah is telling you don't bring that as a carbon, of course I don't need a pasuk to tell me that, because if it's before yish, then the ganav could not have made it hegdish. It's not his. Elalav achal yish. It's after yish, and what the chiddush of the pasuk is to telling you ushma mina yish loikana. Just because you stole an animal and you made it hegdish, which it could be made hegdish, doesn't mean it totally belongs to the ganav, and therefore it cannot be brought as a carbon. Shma mina, that's another proof that Yish is not koina. So Rava and Ula both agree to Rav Yosef, Yish is not koina. Well, Rava who the Amma gazel carbon the chavrei. Rava before on the previous daf said that carbonine doesn't mean you stole a chulin animal, you stole the carbon of the ganav, of the nignav. So Iba say mahadabe. Either Rava didn't like that teretz, so he retracted. Either maybe it's one of them was Rapapa. In other words, Rapapa may have been the one that held that Yish is not koina, and Rava maintained his position that Yish is koina. So it's not very clear. But anyway, we have a couple of Amaroim that hold that Yish is not koina. New Gemara. We learned in the Gemara before. We learned in the Mishnah that if you shech a shor or a seh, so the pasuk says you pay a ba'a v'chamisha, right? A ba'a v'chamisha. You steal an animal, only a shor v'seh, you pay a 4 or 5. So the Gemara is just quickly asking, why is it that this halacha only applies by a shor and seh? Va'amai neilav shor mishabes. Let's learn a Gzeira Shava and say, just like Shabbos, all animals are included. So also by the payment of Abba v'chamisha should apply by any type of animal that you stole. If you stole another kosher animal, a deer, you should pay 4 or 5. Why is it specifically by a shor or noseh, by an ox or a sheep? Amarava, Amakrav, the pasuk says shor v'seh shnei pa'amim, shor v'seh in midei achrin eloi. Rava said that the pasuk says, so the pasuk says shor v'seh twice in the pasuk. So therefore, it's only by shor and a seh, by nothing else. So the Gemara says, wait a second, you're telling me that the Torah repeated itself, and that's how you know it only applies by shor v'seh? Amri, hai miyata, which one is extra? The safe miyatar. If you can tell me the end of the pasuk where it says Chamisha Baka Sham Tachas Ashar, Barbat Sign Tachas Haseh, that the end of the pasuk extra, the Dichter Rahman the pasuk could have written Kikin Ishar Sat Vachim Bechare. Chamisha Baki Sham Tachtov, Barbat Sign Tachtov. It could have said Tachtov. It didn't have to repeat the word Shar and Seh. Because of Rahman if the Torah would have written it such a way, Havamina, I would have thought that even if you steal a shor, or if you steal an ox, you'd have to pay 9 animals. I mean, if the Torah would have written it that way, I would have think that you have to pay 9 animals for stealing just a shor, or 9 animals if you steal just a seh. V'chitema haksiv tachtav tachtav, but then the Torah wrote tachtav tachtav twice, so I would never have such a thing. Chad tachtav miyater, one of them is extra. Hahu miboyle l'drasha achrina. So the Torah didn't have to write tachtav twice, and because it wrote a tachtav, I would never think that you have to bring 9 karbanos. Says the Gemara, none of them are extra. Hahu miboyle l'drasha achrina. I still need a tachtav for another drasha. The Tanya we learned in a brisa, Yochel Ganav Shar Shavamani Sham Tachtam Nagidim. I would have thought that if you steal a shar that's worth 100 zuz, you can give back a shar that's worth nothing, like it's on his deathbed. How do you know you have to give something that's equivalent to what you stole, a healthy animal? Talmud Loimit Tachtov. The Torah says Tachas, so you have to replace what you stole. So Tachtov is not extra. So how would I know? So Shar V'seh is not extra. So which one is extra to teach me that only a Shar V'seh and nothing else? El Shar V'seh the Reishim Yosa. The beginning of the pasuk is extra. The Tichta Rachman Torah could have written Kigan Ish Tvachim Mochai Chamisha Bachisham Tachashav Barbasoin Tachas Aseh. Why did the Torah have to say in the beginning of the pasuk the word shar and seh? So again, that's teaching you only shar and seh and not any other animal. So the Gemara asks back, if the Torah would have written it that way, I would think that you have to steal 2 animals in order to get into the above chamisha. So the Gemara says, not true. You shechted one of them. So it's you could sell that implies that you stole one of them. Lechat. Says the Gemara, but maybe I would think maybe you have to steal both of them and sell them. It means, so certainly I would never think that you have to do 2 averis in order to come into the parsha of above chamisha. So the Gemara asks, the Gemara says, maybe I might have thought that you have to steal 2 animals, shecht one, and sell one, and then you're in the parsha of above chamisha. That the Gemara says cannot be because it says oy mecharik siv. It says either you stole it, so you don't have to do both. The Akati in the Gemara remains by this question. Havamina added known of tavai. You just can't say that the rachis and the rachis service is extra because I would think you need to steal both of them. You shecht one and keep one. You stole one and keep one. The Torah had to write Ishar Aseh in the beginning of the pasuk. So again, we're going to conclude right now. What is extra to teach me that the above chamisha only applies by shar and seh and not by any other animal? So the Gemara concludes and says, finally, a shar the safe of said the reishim yata. There's an extra shar in the end of the pasuk, and there's an extra word seh in the beginning of the pasuk. The Niftar Rahman could have written like this. Kignav ishar. If a man steals an ox, utvache mechare sold it, utvache shechted it or sold it. Chamishim bacha yisham tachlat. He pays 5 oxen. Ba'arba and 4 sheep. Tachas aseh. If he would have stolen a sheep, so the Torah could have written it that way. Have it written one time shar and one time seh. Shar, the sefer said the ratio laminally. Why did the Torah have to write again shar in the end of the pasuk and seh in the beginning of the pasuk? Shma mina shar v'seh in midiachrina loy. That all this halacha b'bar v'chamisha only apply by an ox and a sheep, but not by any other kosher or non-kosher animal. That's what that's what it teaches me. So we know that above v'chamisha is only by shar and seh. Okay, we'll stop here.